I know you want to talk about transformation. And the first thing I thought was, yeah, I feel like, basically, I'm still going through the transformation, but it's cycles. And then what I did was write down some notes of things that I've come to understand and know that what's enabled me to
Mm,
create life more purposeful, that I'm enjoying.
that sounds perfect. I love that.
Yes, and so that was a light bulb for me that I really, use in my coaching. It's like there's a difference between what we're saying and what we're doing.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so, and then that commitment, this is where I was going with it. I used to feel bad, like I was doing something wrong when I would get that feedback. I don't get it as much nowadays because I think people are starting to catch on and realize that paying attention to pain and suffering is only focused on pain and suffering, and they're starting to realize it. A lot of more people are saying they're not watching the news and ultimately, if you
Mm,
were to force me into some type of transformation, it would have been the linking of those things together.
that's beautiful. Wow. Yeah.
So so that's it, and there's so much more in between. When we talk about this, it's almost like an onion.
I know,
Like,
right?
where do I jump in?
Welcome to Miraculous Transformations, conversations about powerful practices that create powerful transformations. Join me as I delve into stories of change and explore the tools and practices that have helped people navigate their paths. You might just find some you'd like to try yourself. Thank you for being here with me, Julie. I'm so excited to talk to you today. So, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to dialoguing with you. So this is a lot of fun for me. So I'm Julie McNeil, and of course, we met. Oh my goodness, I think what was it, like 7, 8 years ago on a
It was in 2016, so
oh my gosh, yeah. Number of
almost, yeah, 9 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah. And of course, we were in each other's energy stream. So we just connected, and it was you and I and a couple of other friends. And we've been on this journey together. And our spiritual, I guess, evolution or evolving as spiritual beings. And so we met on the cruise. So a little bit about me. So I currently live in St. John, Indiana. I'm from Chicago and born and raised. I have a daughter who's, oh my goodness, 37. I have two grandchildren, 4 and 17, I have my life partner and my family. So I live here from Chicago, but my daughter and family moved here a couple of years ago, and so I migrated my elderly parents, and so this is where we're living now. But we're in proximity to Chicago, and so I do a lot of coaching. Most of it is in the corporate space right now, lately, I should say, as an executive coach. But I use a lot of spiritual practices, and it's foundational with the self-authenticity and understanding who you are and connecting to the self. And I also am a life coach. And so I'm looking forward to this is really timely for me, Katie, because it's a segue into me doing more of the life coaching, and making that a bigger portion of what I've been doing. And
Awesome.
yeah, so this is an
So,
interesting time. But I'll stop for the question.
with your corporate coaching, are they open to the incorporation of spiritual practices in the corporate realm?
Yeah, I'd say I'm finding over the years, I'm finding more and more that to be true. Now, when I'm in a one-on-one coaching situation with someone, typically they are very open. It's not the way I describe it to the corporation, it's not, well, we're going to do spiritual coaching. It isn't
Gotcha.
described that way in my bio, but it is about balance and wellness and that mind body spirit connection. So that's usually the way I express it, and so they're very open to that. I'm
Yeah,
finding
that makes sense.
that's been that's been fun. Now, when I get into the coaching, I kind of take it as deep as the person wants to go.
Okay.
And so sometimes they'll go pretty deep, sometimes they'll still stay a little surfacey.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So that's what's happening with me. I'm working on an offering to sort of help people at this really interesting time that we're in. This
Yeah, we are, aren't we? Well,
yeah.
and it's we're in a time of transformation, I feel like, on the planet and in our society. And so I think it's a great time to talk about personal transformation, which is why I decided to start these conversations. And so I would love to hear what you would like to share about your own personal journey.
Yeah, yeah. So when you put that question out, I said, hey, maybe I'm still going through a transformation, but and what I mean by that is, I just think that this is a process through this life. But there have been there's been some things that I feel have really helped me, and I'd be glad to try to call them into this discussion that I think have been foundational for. I feel like my life feels pretty good to me. And, I think I started with the idea that, Abraham Hicks, your life should feel good to you. Remember those conversations early
Yeah.
on? And that's true. And I think that's true for everyone. And it's it's what I really start off my coaching with is letting people know that because I'm not sure that we're aware of that. So I don't think we're sure that we're mindful that we should feel good, that that's natural. And so if things are not feeling good, then we have some work to do, but that's the first thing. Do you deserve it? Yes, you all deserve it. So my caveat is I'm still going through transformation only because I think that life is a journey.
Hmm.
But one of the things that I feel that has really helped me is to grow in self-awareness. And so I'm much more aware of things than I used to be. I'm mindful of things and obviously not aware of things that I'm not aware of, right? That's hence the definition, self-awareness. But I think underneath our opportunity, I'm not going to call it a challenge, is to understand that we tend to judge a lot. And I see myself often putting things into good piles and bad piles, and this is right and this is wrong, which I think is really at the point of where our country is, our world is right now, this idea of them against us, and so this judgment piece is, I think, where the work is. And I think a lot of the judgment of my way or the highway has a lot to do with insecurity and self-judgment, not feeling that we're good enough and not knowing that we feel we're not good enough. So that's one of the things that I try to challenge myself with when I find myself feeling maybe feeling a little insecure about something. Something happens, and then I'm just asking the question, "What am I? What's underneath that?" And challenging myself to remember that I am appropriate and I am good, that there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just working on things.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think, one of the principles I hold to is that, a lot of times people are trying to understand what's my purpose. I got to find my life purpose, and I tell my clients, your life purpose is to be yourself. So just put that away. That work is done, and so, just to be now what you do in your life, you get to choose that. But as far
Mm.
as our purpose is to be authentic. And I think, and I hold that our authentic selves, we are love. And if we're not feeling that, we're just not aligned to who we are. And so that has been really foundational for me is to know that my purpose and I'm not one for quoting the Bible a lot, but and I don't even know where it is, but know thyself. I believe that's a statement in the Bible.
Mm,
And
okay.
that's what that is to know and realize who we really are. And so understanding what you value and why, what do you want? These are the questions that I've been working on over many years of my actual spiritual focus. developing myself that way is knowing what those are and trying to line up, knowing when I'm not lined up, and some techniques that I use to get back to myself
Yeah,
is
what are some of the techniques that you've used?
well, Abraham Hicks is one of the statements that you know, there's nothing more important than that you should feel good,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
So that remembering that and paying attention to content, you know,
Mm,
that makes me feel, raises my vibration or lowers my vibration. Um, Being very, what would I call it? Purposeful in the morning when I wake up, making sure that I don't listen to things that are upsetting or worrying. The news, I many years ago stopped watching the news back when it wasn't popular not to watch the news.
mhm.
I'm just sort of looking at finding things that are uplifting to feed my spirit. It isn't just what you put in your body from a food standpoint. It's also the content, the people,
Right. Totally. Yeah.
and minimizing toxic people in my life. I don't really have to do that anymore. The energy and the universe takes care of that. There's so many good, positive, and uplifting and loving people in my life now. So I don't even really have to pay attention to that anymore. But yeah, realizing that I'm creating my reality, and I have to do what I can to keep my vibration in a good feeling place,
Hmm.
in a good feeling place. So those, and I'm trying to bring it down to like tactical things, but it is the kind of movies I watch. It's that I like to laugh a lot, so, and certainly it's my perspective, right? So how can I tell that story better when something comes at me that feels a little bit off or makes me feel uncomfortable? But
Yeah.
taking responsibility for my own reality that I'm creating it.
Well, and I think what I'm hearing too, when you talk about, going back to the self-awareness, all of those things that you're talking about right now, like paying attention to what you're watching, who you're spending time with. A lot of times I think we get into like autopilot mode and we do things and we forget to notice how they make us feel. And so I think like that awareness of how do I feel after I spend time with this person? How do I feel after I talked about this topic? Or, after I watched that show. And sometimes I think for me, because I've gone through a very similar process and it's been a very slow rollout for me because there's been certain things that I'm aware of that do not feel good, like shows and movies, for example. It's been a very slow transition to um not watching. I don't watch most movies that come out anymore because I do not want to watch a movie that is about like the end of the world ending in this like tragic way. I'm like, no, thanks. I'm not going to call that in. I don't want to focus on that. And there's really, when you start paying attention, it's challenging to find the movies and the shows that are really uplifting. And so anyway, it's been a slow process of really noticing how do I feel after I watch the thing. Okay, no, I'm not going to do that again. And sometimes I think you are left with this feeling of like, wow, what am I going to do to entertain myself?
So I totally agree. But it's sort of funny. So this morning, my Leland, my partner, my boyfriend, fiance, whatever, he and I were watching Gremlins. We were like, you know what? I don't know what we were talking about. Somehow the movie Gremlins came up, and it's a funny movie and it's kind of heartfelt. So we were like at 3 o'clock in the morning, we're watching Gremlins. And so we do really luckily, the nice thing about having, all these different, venues, the apps, you can find movies. So we're searching for Gremlins. But you're right. We look at a lot of old movies, things that brought those old good feelings of balance and all the. So we love to watch movies. But you're right. Some of the new stuff. I was on a plane the other day and that movie Civil War was
Mm,
playing
heavy.
one of the, yeah. And so that's an example. And I won't look at it because I'm not really looking for that energy. So the other thing is, so this brings me to a real important concept. I trust in the laws of the universe as much as I can. And I say that way because I think sometimes we don't have awareness sometimes and we can fall off, but really understanding that the law of attraction, that which is like itself is attractive. So we attract according to where we're vibrating. And so that's what you and I are saying, right? So we're very careful about the content that we connect to or spend time on because you acquiesce, right, to the vibration of the things that are around you. And I trust in the law of attraction to extremely because I also know that if I want to know where I've been vibrating or where my vibrations, just look around me. I can look around and see what I've created. And I remember years ago feeling like I had several people in my close circle that were toxic and that were giving me lots of trouble. And I was like, oh my goodness, it hit me like, okay, this is not just a coincidence. What are you vibrating that you have all these people, in your close, vicinity that are that? And so then I knew I had to work on me. And I
Oh
worked
my
on me.
gosh.
Yeah.
I
One day.
love that realization. Interesting.
Yeah. Cause it's like, oh, what am I creating? Oh, I did that.
So I'm curious how you respond to the thought of, that this always looking for the positive, always looking for the things that are going to raise our vibration. Some people might label as, spiritual bypassing, I've heard it called, or things like that. So burying your head in the sand, like not recognizing what's going on in the world and things like that. And I'm right there with you. And I don't feel like I'm doing that, but I do think that sometimes from an outsider's perspective, people might think that. So what are your thoughts on that?
I used to feel bad, like I was doing something wrong when I would get that feedback. I don't get it as much nowadays because I think people are starting to catch on and realize that paying attention to pain and suffering is only focused on pain and suffering, and they're starting to realize it. A lot of more people are saying they're not watching the news, for example, right? But in the past, I used to feel like there's something wrong. I did something wrong. Like try to, maybe I'm not doing it the right way. But now I feel like my response is if whatever you're doing is working for you, then you keep doing you, boo, right? So it's kind of,
Yeah.
but this is working for me. And I remember one time I told someone that I didn't believe in, the devil, right? I didn't believe in Satan. And she was very upset, this woman, and she said she was going to pray for me. And I said, okay, well, if that makes you feel better, you can, but I don't need it. Because so I'm real clear now that of how I'm starting to become more clear of how this all works. And I'm spending more time realizing um that it's okay to be different and hold different perspectives. And I think that's where my biggest work is now. So that's the one reason why I say, hey, what's been my transformation? I think it's a process. I feel like I'm still going through it because sometimes I find that I'm trying to become more comfortable with the fact that we're all different. When I see someone acting unlovingly, I want them to act lovingly. And I weigh in on that, more than my spiritual beliefs say that I should. Um,
Right.
I should be more, if I'm gonna, it's okay for us to it has to be 24/7. It can't be just under certain circumstances. So I think I'm trying to vet that part out, and I might be getting a little bit off track from your original question. Um, but how to live in both worlds, like the spiritual side and the physical world, and be okay at the same time when others have a problem with it, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
is
Um,
really, yeah, I think it's not always easy.
yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, is it getting easier for you as well? That
When you just said that, I kind of went, huh. I had this thought process as your answer was unfolding, and I thought, okay, I asked that question from a place of potentially from a place of this used to be the case, but I'm realizing that I haven't gotten that feedback lately either.
yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And you probably have had people, I remember I've had a few people say, what are you doing? Because they're just like curious. Why is your life good? You know, I had a guy call me, and it's funny, you never know who, it doesn't have to be someone close to you, someone you ever see, but I had a guy call me once from his hospital bed who I kind of knew as a work colleague.
Okay.
And he said, I'm laying here and I'm having all these back surgeries. I'm in a tremendous amount of pain and my life's been, I've been struggling. And you came to mind and I just said, something said, call you and find out you must know something.
Wow.
Yes, I was floored. I couldn't believe it. This was actually right before, it was a little while ago. It was right before COVID. And I thought, this is a person I hadn't seen in like a couple of years.
Okay.
Lost track of, and he somehow just called me, so yeah, I think people are curious about what's going on with you.
Yeah.
Uh, I think my biggest struggle, and I know my biggest struggle is feeling okay that I'm thriving when others aren't thriving so well.
Mm. Yeah. And what do you do to help yourself feel okay with that?
Yeah, I have to talk myself back into alignment about that, realizing that, you know, I love to quote Abraham Hicks, you can't get sick enough to make sick people healthy, right? So there's
Mm.
no value in not thriving, going over there with others. So demonstrate, be connected and demonstrate. But so I have to self-talk myself back into the value of being being the value of thriving and what that does for me and others who are around us.
Yeah, it
And
makes me think of, my background as a teacher, and when you teach anybody, but especially you talk about this a lot when you teach young children, everything is modeling, right? Like you're modeling how to read the book out loud, you're modeling how to write the sentence, like you're modeling everything so that they can see the way that you do it when you have that skill and they can start to work towards that skill. And so I think it's the same I mean, it's the same concept, right? You're just modeling by just being you.
right, that's right. And it really goes back to the commitment. And I remember years ago when I was going through my divorce, so this was over 20 years ago, and that was a rough time, right? And my confidence was low, my self-esteem was low. I felt wrong for getting divorced. Didn't feel I was raised Catholic and
Mm.
all of that. And I just remember how off I was in myself. So I just remember someone asking me, what is it that you want? And then I started to really say, well, I want to be happy, you know,
Mm.
and and this was a very astute person that was talking to me. And I said, no, I don't really believe you. And I'm like, what?
Oh.
You mean you don't believe me? That's crazy. Why wouldn't I want to be happy? And so he went on to ask me, well, he was said, I told him things about what things were going on in my life. And he said, well, have you, put your house up for sale? And I said, no, not yet. He said, how does that make you feel? I said, oh, it makes me feel bad. I'm not getting it done. He said, have you, talked to your daughter about, your relationship and have you done that? And I said, no, I haven't done that. So he went down the list and everything would ask me afterwards, how does it make you feel? Back to this feeling thing. And I said, it makes me feel bad. He said, that's why I don't believe that you want to be happy because so that was a light bulb for me that I really, use in my coaching. It's like there's a difference between what we're saying and what we're doing.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so, and then that commitment, this is where I was going with it. The commitment has to be to my happiness. And so then I just wasn't really being committed to it. I was saying, I assumed I wanted, you know, maybe at a deep level I did, but unconsciously I didn't want happiness because I wasn't doing things that were going to make me happy. I wasn't holding perspectives and
Yeah.
view of life that uplift me versus feeling bad and blameful, and so it's an interesting thing. I think it's we're trained out of it, right? You and I've talked about this, I'm sure, many times over our conversations about how we're born with understanding our value and and loving ourselves, and we just sort of forget or get talked out of it
Mm, yeah.
over the years by maybe sometimes well-intended people. You should
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that. You don't deserve, what do you think who do you think you are? And all this kind of upbringing that we get from society.
One of the things that I work with a lot in my mindfulness coaching with kids and adults is self-love and self-compassion and self-worth. And what I notice, especially with kids, is they really get self-conscious and embarrassed and like can't answer at first when you ask them what they love about themselves. What are you really good at? What's awesome about you? And they feel like they are bragging or they're, doing something wrong. And I say, well, it takes practice. And so we're going to practice. And so, what is one skill that you feel like you do really well? And I'll start. And then when I get to what's something about your physical body that you like, they do not want to answer that.
Wow, wow. And how old are the kids usually, Katie?
I work with kids anywhere. I've worked with one-on-one kids as young as 6, up into, you know, 14, 15. But most of my students, like that kind of golden age is between like 8 and 12 seems to
Yeah,
be like where most of them fall right now.
right, right. So yeah, I think younger than that, they're still connected. And you asked me a moment ago, what do I do to just to try to keep my vibration or to raise it when I need to? And it's like things I'm looking at could be pictures. I love watching little children. They're so real and so, clear about it, and they're so empowered
Mm.
at that, like say that 2, 3, 4 kind of age. And so those are some of the things I do is I focus there on animals and children. But I have this little video of my granddaughter, and I just ran across it the other day. I said, you know what, I'm going to use this as a touch point. But it was her third birthday, and she woke up in the morning and she put stickers all over herself, and she was we were videotaping. I'm like, how are you feeling? She says, I gotta find my party. So, you gotta find, yes, I have to find my party, Nana. And so I like that concept, is that I think that's how we should be living each day, is looking for our party.
I love that. I
You
gotta
know,
find my party. How fun.
so I'll find obscure things that I connect to emotionally like that. It's like that spoke to me. And so it's something that, I use something like that, just fun things that are so powerful, that
Yeah.
are the spirit that we were born in, that unfortunately maybe at age 6, 7, 8, we start to fall asleep and to lose it, you
Yeah.
know. So and by the way, she's having her awakening now. It's starting. She started at 16 and getting into crystals. And so now we've been having these really cool conversations. So she's 17. So she's kind of, I call it waking up and remembering all of these things that we're talking about. So it's a lot of
That's
fun.
fun.
But that's an aside. But yeah, but things, anything at all that is, being creative in your thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, I have had this experience. So I started making these videos for, like I was telling you before, I started making some videos for TikTok and doing and putting them on YouTube and stuff. And my initial purpose behind it was that I wanted to spend more time talking about mindfulness and meditation, and I wanted to communicate to the universe, this is what I do. And I was already teaching, but I wanted to be doing more. And I was like, I feel like I have a lot of information a lot of knowledge to share, and I want to share it with as many people as, possible. And
Yeah.
so I started making these videos, and the funny thing that has happened is that I discovered that I like making the videos. Like I like the process of editing them and putting them together. And what I discovered was that when I started playing around with the editing app and like putting music to them and like cutting them in certain places and making them some of them funny and things like that, is that I was feeling creative. And I realized that I have never felt that feeling before, not that way. I had never felt creative in that way, which is, some people will say, would be surprising because I was a teacher of young children and you put up like bulletin boards and you decorate your classroom and stuff, but something about the creative process of making these videos pulled out a creativity in me that I had never experienced before. And it really creates this interesting momentum. And I just think I'm learning, it's really, really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think there's something about when we're in that creative space that we are fully aligned to our full self.
Yeah.
Almost like the funnel is open, and that feels amazing. That feels
Hmm.
amazing. And I
Yeah.
believe, whatever it is that you're doing that creates that's what you should be spending more time doing. It's so, and it's like you just sort of like fully actualized in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, with your videos, by the way, it's interesting. Even if this is something I hold to be true, that even if there's just one person that is going to receive it, then you should be doing it. There's at least one person, and I know there's many, many more, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've heard people talk about writing a book or anything at all that they're doing like that. If you're, um, it's for the joy of it. So here's a quote. I think this was Eckhart Tolle. He said that, and this is something that I'm writing about now. Maybe one day it'll be something I'll publish, but the purpose of dancing isn't to
Yeah.
get to a specific place on the floor, is for the joy of the dance. And so what I think I hear you saying is that you're creating these videos. You thought to get maybe to put it out there, but really what your spirit is receiving is the joy of the activity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it sort of like goes twofold,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I've heard that quote before too. I feel like every time I hear it, so many quotes are like this. Every time I hear it, it lands differently depending on where I am in my transformation or my life journey. And so I love revisiting quotes like that. That's a really powerful one.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing I wanted to mention too was expectation.
Okay.
So that's a fun idea to me, is expectation that things are working out, even when they don't seem like they might be. And
Ooh,
that
that's a good
does,
one.
yeah, I think that dovetails into the concept of needing things to be a certain way. And so just sort of expecting and willing and being kind of willing to be surprised by the universe, how things will unfold. And there's a freedom in that. It feels so, luscious to just sort of not need things to be a certain way, but
Mhm.
trust that it's going to be good no matter what. And that's probably what that's what I've been I think I'm doing well with that. I'm getting better as time goes with this expectation and feeling trusting that it does turn out. And you look back in your life, even the things that didn't go quite the way you wanted led to something that was there, that was a benefit. So finding
Right.
benefit is one of the tools that I use for coaching and for myself, is the creativity of that, like a situation. And now it's like, oh, this is a good one. This one is a little different or feels a little, I could go down that way with it or this way, but I'm just going to be creative and finding how did that benefit me? How did that
Mm.
benefit the world or whatever?
Yeah,
And
so it's like you're mining for the gold in a situation. Like, and I think that what I'm hearing is that you coach people or yourself to go back and do that, to show yourself, to establish the trust that
yeah,
that's how things go. And then you can drop into that in the present moment with what's going on. And I think the
yeah,
word expectation, it's a good one because it's got like that double meaning or double connotation. It can either be like an expectation, like you said, of like something is supposed to be a certain way and it needs to be, unfold like this, and this, or that expectation of like everything's going to work out and I wonder how it's going to happen.
right. I can't wait to see how it happens, or this is going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. I'll be surprised, delighted, caught off guard in a good way. And it's like, and you see the magnificence of the universe, how it works these things, and it's magnificent. And so that trust and expectation is like, wow, so I can't get it wrong, right? It's and I think that's what it is. It makes me more courageous and fearless. And I love that. That's a great feeling when you
Totally.
have that just sort of lighten up. There's nothing all that serious going on. Yeah.
Yeah, that is, I need a constant reminder of that. Reminder to play, reminder to lighten up, that this isn't all so serious. Because I can really get in the weeds with kind of the seriousness of a situation. And I think a lot. And so I analyze and so I love having the constant reminder of that, not to take things so seriously, laugh more, play, enjoy, you
Yeah,
know.
that's right. And it really is when you think about it too, Katie, it's an opportunity. Some things happen. Maybe someone does something that you didn't like or felt, you were put off by it or felt disrespectful or something like that. And it's really an opportunity for you to, or for us to walk the talk. Because if I say that, the part of what I do is I define who am I? I'm love, I'm happiness, I'm a person who operates with integrity. If these are the things that I know that I am, then how do I line up to that in how I respond?
Mm.
And so it's an opportunity when those things happen, maybe it's not something you wanted, but now I have an opportunity to demonstrate who I am. And so my coaching, I'm coming around this the back way, but my coaching really is grounded, whether it's in corporate or whoever I'm working with, is understanding who I am authentically and building that relationship with myself, having that person really working on what they value and how they live according to their own personal values. Yeah.
So I had this, speaking of quotes, since you've said a couple quotes, it made me think of this. I had this quote that used to pop up in my phone every day. And I say used to because I had it pop up, I had it on my calendar and it popped up on my phone every day for like, I think 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. And I just changed it less than a year ago because I realized, oh, I'm doing this now. And so I changed it to something new and I have a new
Okay.
quote that pops up. But it was a Gandhi quote and it's happiness is when what I say, what I do, and what I think are in harmony.
Yeah.
And when I first discovered that quote, I went, huh, what I am thinking is very different than what I'm saying and doing. And I have this perspective and worldview that I am not actually stating out loud or living, embodying. And so I want to change that. And actually, I feel like when I met you on the Abraham cruise, that was like a huge focus of my life at that time. Like I had just discovered that quote and I was like, I am trying to do and say the things that I think about. And one of the ways I'm doing that is by coming on this cruise.
Yeah, right. Okay, exactly. I think we all were doing that because I had just lost my job. So
Uh-huh.
it was counterintuitive to go on a cruise.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
wait, oh my goodness. But trust and faith, right? So that was a big statement for, I think, the four of us that, was it four of us or five of us that came together on that cruise? I know for sure, my roommate, who I ended up roommate, we were all in that kind of, we both just lost our jobs and we ended up being roommates and trusting in the law of attraction. It brought us together. And I thought it was so cool how we would just, even when we weren't together on the ship and we were out on land, we would still run into each other on the street, which was very interesting. But
Well,
yeah,
so you and Sandy would?
no,
Because
Sandy and I ran into you and Kate.
you, me and Kat, yeah,
You and
totally.
Kat,
That's
right?
what I remember the most. I was like, this
Everywhere we
cruise
went.
ship, everywhere we went, the cruise ship was huge. We, the first, I think it was like a 10-day cruise, and probably the first like 5 or 6 days, we didn't make plans to meet up, and we kept meeting up in the dining room, in the everywhere on the ship. And then we'd get off the ship and would be walking around a town and would run into each other at a cafe. And we were like, we're clearly meant to be friends.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'm telling you. So yeah, but trusting in the process. That's another thing too, in this journey, why we're here. I really I feel like I buy into the concept that, we come here knowing, we're very closely aligned to our spiritual aspect of who we are, which is the majority of us is spiritual, right? And we're just having a physical experience here by focusing a part of our spirit and crystallizing into this physical form, our physical body. But I buy into the concept. I think I kind of get why we would just to maybe even have things that don't go well, to have contrast. We have contrast so that you don't know hot unless you know cold, and that kind of thing, or you don't know up unless you know down. And so back to this being expecting that things have purpose and that it's working out. It's in divine order. And I think my spiritual journey is helping me understand some of those statements like that. What do you mean everything's in divine order? What does that mean? People say that throughout your life, like, but they don't really feel it, like you were saying. You're thinking this and feeling that. And so I feel like the transformation, if you will, for me has been kind of connecting these pieces together in how I see life and how I live life and how I approach my work or whatever. And you and I think have a lot in common. But one of the things we have in common is that I think we want to live the work. I love that. You know,
Yeah.
I love that. And I love helping other people live their passion too. Like, be passionate about whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had I hope to say this if my corporate clients would hear this, but some of them decide this isn't for me because we go back to what you value, who you are, and the things that you're doing. And if you're, for example, in an environment that you value highly in your transparency, but you can't be transparent. And you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So how do you level that out?
Yeah, I feel like that would feel hard. And
Yeah,
if you're not up for facing that at the moment, then
right.
having it brought up every week in a coaching session could be hard. And that goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, which is, or a little while ago, which is the process of realizing that everybody's different and letting people be who they are and where they are on their path. And yeah, I think it's interesting, this idea of letting people be where they are on their path can sometimes feel or seem like, oh, there's a hierarchy or I'm judging, where I am versus where somebody else is. But really it's that removal of judgment that anything is wrong. Like everything's working out, everyone's in the place that they're meant to be, and it's all okay.
And do you ever, so having said that, because we are in this really pivotal point in the world. Like never been here before, never even imagined this, right? So on one level, it might sound like we're saying just roll over and just, oh, live in, live in Nirvana, and you live in your own world or head in the sand. So sometimes I think I look at myself as looking at it, if I'm going to answer the question spiritually or in the physical world, and I'm trying to blend that together more. And
Mhm.
that's not easy for me. I think that's where the big challenge is. But how do I help create a better world? That would be my thing to do that I'm doing here. My purpose is to be myself authentically. So I don't think I have a shot at anything else unless in anything else in a real successful way unless I'm authentic to who I am.
Mhm.
How do I so it's not necessarily clear. This is probably a question that I'm trying to put my arms around too, because I look at what's happening. We have like positive energy and negative energy, things that people are doing that are uplifting, things that people are doing that are not. Okay, so that's real. We're not saying we don't notice that,
Mhm.
right? Um, but then if my role is to make things better or try to make things better in any small way that I can or any big way that I can, and how do I do that without noticing that? So I notice that some things are up, so how do I be aligned to who I am and then act, then go talk to people or share my concepts from that
Yeah.
mind space.
I think it's so important to, I mean, that's the thing is that like, when was it Gandhi that said, be the change you want to see in the world? Okay. So is that the one, did you say that earlier
Oh, but
already?
I was going to say that. I
We
wrote that
are
down.
all
All
about
right.
the quotes.
All right. Right.
So the be the change you want to see in the world, like you said, I've heard that quote my whole life. And it's only been recently where I'm like, oh, I really get what that means.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you're saying is we can spend all this time pouring ourselves into the world and being an activist or being a teacher or being a social worker or whatever it is.
Mhm.
But if we are pouring from a cup that's either empty or that is filled with whatever, angst or frustration or
Yeah.
disillusionment, then
Yeah.
that is the energy that we're putting out into the world, literally the energy you're putting into the world. So you've got to, I feel like I have to get right in here, aligned in here, not right, but aligned in here and solid with how I view the world and what I want to be, how I want to be in the world. And then I can go whatever it is. And I mean, it can be anything, literally anything. I can be a grocery checker. I can be the president. It does not matter what you're doing. If you are like solid and aligned in here, then you're going to be interacting with and inspiring
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
um, all the
Right.
time, I think.
And you and I could have probably another like long conversation about the metaphysics behind all that and how all that energy works, right? And so when you were saying that too, so be the change you want to see in the world. Sometimes I have was a couple of things I want to say. Sometimes I have a client that, a leader, I want to engage people. I want to be people to be engaged by me. I'm like, be the engagement. It's like be the change. Just fill in the word. You want love, be the love. You know, you want more love, be the love. You want more engagement, be the engagement. You want, so you fill in the blank and understanding that the you energy, it's attractive.
Mm,
You put in, you get out. And you're right. So now we have this polarization that's going on, which by the way, we were always headed down this path. It's almost like you have to fall to your knees before you rise up because so much, was going on in the undercurrent. And so I'm, trying to, who do I be in this moment? And being true to myself, this authentic self, that's the alignment. And so go there first. This is what, I try to I always say I sound like a broken record. I'm a broken record, but go to the alignment. We know that statement from Abraham too, but go to your authentic self and then act and then be guided, even be guided to the right words, the right actions, the right demeanor um,
Yeah.
there. Otherwise, you're not you're not being helpful for anyone, for yourself and for others.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that place of recovery from who are we being in the moment. That's my work is having that self-awareness.
Yeah.
And
Look at it, ties all the way back to the first thing you said.
that's right, right. And it takes courage sometimes. Sometimes you don't like what oh God, I feel insecure. I feel jealous. I feel envious. Oh God, I don't like that. But now, so what are you going to do about it? So now what? And there's the opportunity. So I'm starting to see how this all links together and I like it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like the process as opposed to resisting the process and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
So
another Abraham one, right? Like going downstream instead of upstream.
yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. It's so
Feels
true.
much better.
And I attracted a partner who is I'm glad that is willing to point me in another direction when I get off the mark on that, which I
Mhm.
find so surprising, Katie, because I just think, I'm thinking, don't I know this by now? But sometimes we get off the mark, but we can't judge that as well. We still get to choose in that moment what's next.
It
So
helps. I think it helps me have compassion for everybody's journey because my journey is wavy as well.
yeah, yeah.
And I will just say too, like I feel the same. I feel lucky to have a partner to have David as my partner do the same thing. And I used to say, I want to be in a relationship with somebody who will call me on my shit.
You're right.
And then I was like, do I really want that?
You're
Because
right.
like am I pretending that I'd be okay with that and then I'm going to get that and I'm not going to respond well to it? And what I've realized is, yes, I do want that.
Mhm.
And the way that we do that is very gentle and
Yes.
very authentic and heartfelt. And it's not from a place of like calling me on my shit. Really, what it is he's helping me be the best version of myself.
Yes. Yeah. It's a gentle reminder. It's a pointer. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So no, I totally agree with you. It's like, wow, but it's for me, it's like caught me is there are times when I'm like, wow, I did do that. I mean, that was judgmental. It could be something as minor as because I think we're fine-tuning this thing, right? So it could be something as minor as let's say, well, I say something like, I'm gonna call so and so, but they're probably not gonna wanna, do this. Or he's like, how do you know? I'm like, oh, that's true. So it could be something. And I'm finding it's these small things that
The
really still,
expectation.
yeah, they still define where I have been habitually, maybe. It's more of a like momentum, and I'm
Mm.
okay. So I love that awareness because I miss some of those. That's why I say, what am I self-aware? But you're only aware, self-awareness, to things that you're aware of. So having a partner that is lovingly willing to and wanting to help me be the best version of myself and me for him as well is
Right.
really cool. And we've already talked about how all that came together after a lot of sifting and sorting, right, with myself.
Well, and
Uh,
I think that this process of I'm in the process of a transformation. I created this miraculous transformations show with this like very cut and dry kind of idea of like you go through a transformation and then like talk about it, tell the story of it. But that's not actually how life works. Like one of the conversations I had with my friend Chris, he talked about how each transformation he's gone through creates a springboard onto the next one. And I was like, that's actually the perfect way to describe life, right? Like nothing's cut and dry like that. Like we go from one thing, we set ourselves up for the next thing, and how we what we do with that, what direction we take it in, creates the next experience, which could be the next transformation. And so I think the self-awareness that we're always in transformation, that we're mid-transformation, and also the enjoyment and the desire to be okay with that. I mean, I think that that's a big positive as well.
Yeah. I think the totally agree with you on that 100%. And I think that I think that some of us don't feel that we should feel good. I think we've forgotten that. So I think that's sort of like I think the attitude is more for many people is how do I make it through or make this work? It's a different energy from thriving and from knowing that you're valued and that you deserved the best. And that's where that question came from me, like, do you want to be happy? And of course, but then I realized I wasn't on the path for that by the way I was looking at my life and my perspective, and so that challenged me really to toward authenticity and all of this back to the relationship. But I do want to say this before we get like to your end. I started my spiritual journey when my daughter went to well, I grew up in Catholic schools, but it really launched where it was something to focus, a daily focus when she was going to an elementary school that was a Christian school. And she came back and said, Mom, they said that if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to go to hell. And that's when I remember my spirit said to me, it's time. So it's time for you to focus here. And that she was, oh my God, that was 25 years ago. And so the first thing I was looking for was trying to understand what was God, right? And so then I did a lot of lived life and did a lot of things, and I came to an understanding that God was love. Okay, and just very succinct. And so God was love. Then I was trying to understand what was love, and I
Mm.
think I'm getting my order right. And it all came back to I am love. And then I came to the conclusion that we are all God. So I'm just saying, ultimately, if you
Mm.
were to force me into some type of transformation, it would have been the linking of those things together.
That's beautiful. Wow. Yeah,
So yeah, so that's it. And there's so much more in between. When we talk about this, it's almost like an onion.
I know,
Like,
right?
where do I jump in? you know.
Yeah. And that's the fun thing about having these conversations is that I could talk about this stuff all day, every day. And I feel like when I get on these calls with people, they're the same way. They love to talk about this stuff too. And so it's just fun.
It is. It's so, and you truly experience like I do with the coaching. I get what I'm putting out. I get back. So it's back to this just living your passion.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts and thank you for having this conversation with me. I really, really appreciate it.
You're so welcome. I appreciate you inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, it has.
I'd love to do some more conversations with you at some point. I loved it. So thank you.